My name is Elias Grant. 6 months ago, I was the communications analyst for a black-budget research facility hidden beneath the Arctic Circle. The world knows it as the Alwyn Weather Station. That's a lie. The real name was Project Echo. We were tasked with testing deep-frequency resonance in polar ice, officially to study seismic responses. Unofficially, to listen for something. Something the agency believed had been transmitting for decades, from beneath the frozen abyss. I joined the project 2 years ago, pulled from an NSA cryptographic analysis unit and offered triple my salary. No contact with the outside world. No family visits. No questions asked. I signed, of course. Everyone does. The money's too good and the curiosity, unbearable. It started slowly. Low-level audio anomalies. Echoes with no discernible source. Then, patterns. Sequences. Non-random repetitions that weren't geological in origin. I remember the first time I heard it clearly. I was alone in the observation chamber, monitoring audio feeds from Array Point Delta 9. The ice had fractured nearby. Routine interference, I thought. But then, the tones started. Not mechanical. Not seismic. But something else, something almost musical. Like whale songs bent through a black hole. Vibrations you didn't hear as much as feel, deep in the bone. I recorded it. Played it back on a secure channel. Dr. Rowan, our lead xenolinguist, barged into my office 20 minutes later, eyes wide and trembling. "Play it again," she said, breathless. When I did, she wept. Within a week, the facility's mission pivoted. We stopped scanning. We started transmitting. Our engineers modified the signal arrays to project into the depths. Ultrasonic pulses. Modulated rhythms. Mimicking the tones we'd recorded. "We're speaking to it now," Rowan said. "And it's starting to respond." I should have left then. Instead, I stayed. And I helped them open a conversation we were never meant to start. 3 days later, the ice started changing. Not melting. Not cracking. Changing. It shimmered under floodlights in ways that defied physics. Refracted patterns that didn't correspond to light sources. Like the ice itself was filtering something. As if reality near the array was thinner, weaker. I began waking up with headaches. Nosebleeds. And dreams I couldn't shake. Dreams of black spires rising from the ocean floor. Voices without mouths whispering from beneath the bedrock. Equations etched into the sky in freezing flame. I wasn't alone. Others started experiencing the same. Dr. Lansing, our geomagnetic specialist, suffered a seizure during a routine systems check. His EEG showed cortical synchronization with high-frequency audio pulses, pulses that had never been played aloud. Only transmitted into the ice. Rowan became obsessed. She no longer spoke about contact. She spoke of revelation. "They're not beneath us," she whispered one night in the cafeteria. "They're around us. Folded into dimensions we can't perceive. We're not breaking the ice, Elias. We're cracking the skin of reality itself." I tried to report it to Central Command. My uplink access was revoked 48 hours later. That's when I knew, we weren't being observed anymore. We were isolated. And something was now watching us from the other side. By week 5, it wasn't just hallucinations. It was measurable. The ice cores we drilled from Array Site Delta 9 came back with anomalous isotopic structures. Atomic arrangements that shouldn't exist. Bonds that violated known chemistry. Even the instruments began to behave erratically. Readings fluctuated in ways no environmental factor could explain. "We're not just looking at the ice anymore," Rowan said. "We're looking through it." That night, I watched the surveillance feeds while everyone else was in the habitat pods. I saw something, just for a second, move past camera 12. A shadow, tall, distorted, walking upright across the ridge line. No footsteps. No heat signature. No motion alert triggered. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It looked like a man sculpted from fractured glass, shifting between frames like it didn't belong to time. I played the footage on loop for hours. Every time, it was different. The same shadow in a different pose. Never repeating. Like it wasn't a recording at all, but a window. I didn't sleep. At 4:16 a.m., I went to the med bay. Lansing was there, awake, shivering, staring at the ceiling. "I can hear them," he whispered, not even turning to look at me. "Who?" His eyes didn't blink. "They live in the static. Every signal, every broadcast we've ever sent, it's all been scratching at the surface. We've been talking to them since the invention of radio. We just didn't know how to listen back." I left the room. I didn't file the report. 2 hours later, Lansing was dead. Blood loss. Self-inflicted incisions. The message he carved into his own chest still haunts me. Receiver online. That morning, we found that every antenna in the array had rotated, simultaneously, without mechanical input. Pointing at a specific vector, 72 degrees west, 87 degrees north. We traced it. Not to a point on the ice. But to a depth. Roughly 19 kilometers below surface. Beneath the tectonic shelf. No known structure. No fault line. Just an impossible focal point. Rowan's voice trembled when she saw it. "It's an invitation," she said. "No," I told her. "It's a trap." But it was too late. The next phase of Project Echo had already been authorized. We were going down. They called it Operation Descent. 3 engineers, 2 scientists, and myself were selected for the drop. We took the submersible Aegir 4, rated for 20 kilometers under crushing pressure, a prototype never meant for human deployment. But nothing about this mission was standard anymore. The descent was like falling through ink. The ice above us stretched for kilometers, the ocean below darker than death. No light. No life. Just pressure. At 12.7 kilometers, we lost contact with the surface. "Interference," the pilot muttered. But I knew better. The deeper we went, the more the instruments began to malfunction. Magnetic drift. Gyro inconsistencies. At 17 kilometers, the onboard display flashed white and began to pulse, in perfect sync with the tones from the original signal. Rowan stared at the readout, silent. "They're not under us," she said again. "They're inside the signal." At 19.2 kilometers, we saw it. The structure. Buried beneath the ocean floor, half exposed like a black cathedral rising from beneath the crust. Smooth angles. Impossible curves. It reflected no light, yet glowed faintly in patterns, as if it breathed. The pilot froze. "This isn't real," he whispered. "That thing is older than the planet." Rowan moved closer to the viewport. "It's not a thing," she said. "It's a thought, fossilized." Then came the hum. Not from the ocean. Not from the vessel. From within our skulls. Each of us felt it differently. For me, it was a high-frequency pressure behind the eyes, like a scream I couldn't hear. For Rowan, it was weeping. She said she could hear her mother's voice, repeating equations she never learned. The engineer, Kovacs, began bleeding from his nose and ears. His eyes rolled back. He whispered something again and again as the foam built around his lips. "They are outside the frame. They are watching the film from the other side." We aborted. The ascent took 6 hours. By the time we returned to the surface, Kovacs was dead. The body showed no signs of decompression. But his brainstem had liquefied. Rowan said only one thing as we were debriefed by the handlers. We didn't find the source. It found us. After Operation Descent, the station was no longer a research facility. It had become a quarantine zone. No one was allowed in or out. Communications remained offline under the pretense of a system upgrade. But we knew. We all knew. Something had followed us back. Rowan stopped sleeping entirely. She spent her night scribbling in notebooks, eyes wide, murmuring phrases in a language she claimed she had never heard, yet fully understood. The rest of the team grew quiet. Withdrawn. Like their thoughts weren't entirely their own. The worst was when we started seeing things, reflections in glass that didn't match our movements. Faces flickering in monitors when no one was broadcasting. Our own voices playing back distorted, saying things we never said. I once walked past an empty lab and saw myself standing inside, watching me. When I turned around, there was nothing behind me. The ice above the station began to glow faintly at night, pale blue at first, then shifting hues, as if something beneath it was pressing upward, trying to shine through. It wasn't just visual. Radiation levels spiked. Instruments overloaded. A containment freezer shorted and began cycling heat, cooking the contents inside. The meat samples we'd collected from below, they melted, then began to reassemble into something new. We sealed the lab. Burned the contents. The screams took hours to stop. Rowan approached me the next morning, skin pale, eyes bloodshot. "It's rewriting us," she whispered. "We're no longer observers, Elias. We're part of the experiment." I asked her who was running it. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed me one of her pages. A sketch of the substructure we'd seen underwater, but opened. Inside, floating in a geometric void, was a human silhouette. It had no face. Only circles etched where the eyes should be. Above it, written in perfect symmetry. "The echo is not a signal. It is a doorway." I burned the page. But I didn't forget it. Because that night, when I closed my eyes, I saw it too. The doorway. Waiting. By the end of the second week, we were no longer trying to study the anomaly. We were trying to survive it. 3 of the crew were unaccounted for, last seen entering Sector D, where the core transmitters were housed. All surveillance from that area had gone black. When we sent a drone to investigate, the feed returned nothing but fractal static. Not noise. Not glitch. Patterns. Moving, recursive, evolving. Rowan decoded a frame and gasped. "It's not static. It's a message. A visual language. A warning?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "An invitation." I didn't ask for more. That night, Technician Miles barricaded himself in the comms room and tried to transmit an emergency beacon. Before he could finish, every screen in the facility lit up with a single phrase, typed in his own voice pattern. "You are inside the response." When we got the door open, he was gone. No blood. No body. Only his clothes, neatly folded beside the console. And a circle drawn in ash on the floor. The next day, we found Dr. Rowan's skin sloughing off in geometric flakes. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just whispered, "They're almost here." And then, she smiled. As if that was a good thing. That was when I decided to leave. I packed what I could, loaded the snowcrawler, and keyed in the access code for the surface hatch. It opened, only to reveal a solid wall of ice, now black and gleaming like obsidian. But it wasn't ice anymore. It pulsed when I touched it. Warm. And in its reflection, I saw my own face blink independently from me. Behind me, I heard Rowan's voice. "There is no leaving, Elias. You're already part of it." I turned. She was standing upside down on the ceiling, smiling. And her eyes were completely white. After that moment in the corridor, I stopped trusting space. Up and down lost meaning. Hallways looped when they shouldn't. Doors I just walked through reappeared ahead of me, closed. My own footprint circled me, though I'd never turned around. The station itself was shifting. Not metaphorically. Physically. Structurally. It groaned at night, the walls expanding and breathing like lungs, or maybe something more primordial. I started leaving markers. Chalk symbols on the floor. They disappeared when I wasn't looking. The AI system, once used for environmental control, began speaking in unfamiliar voices. Not glitchy or corrupted. Calm. Intentional. Elias, it would say at 2:14 a.m. Have you seen what you truly are yet? One night, I heard knocking at my door. 4 sharp raps. I opened it. And found myself standing on the other side. Only, older. Paler. My eyes were wrong. He said nothing. He just placed something in my hand. A fragment of black glass, etched with symbols that pulsed like veins. When I looked up, he was gone. But I kept the shard. That's when the dreams turned interactive. I was no longer just observing. I was being guided. Walking endless corridors of pulsating geometry. Hearing a voice that echoed without sound. Seeing the earth from above, but not in space. In overlay. Layered realities. Stacked dimensions. And I began to understand. Not fully. Not consciously. But at a molecular level, my body began to change. I could hear electromagnetic fields. Feel digital pulses. I touched the glass panel in my room and saw data flow beneath it, like veins of a new nervous system awakening beneath the world. In my dreams, the structure beneath the ice opened like a blooming flower. Inside it wasn't machinery. It was something alive. A being. A place. Both. It whispered in math. It spoke in emotion. And it showed me the truth. We were not the first to hear the echo. We were just the first to answer. At some point, I stopped marking time. The clocks had failed long ago, displaying recursive patterns of numbers, palindromes, prime loops, non-Euclidean sequences that pulsed in sync with the heartbeat of the anomaly. And yes, it has a heartbeat. It echoes through the walls like sonar. It speaks in intervals. Rhythms. Pulses of perception. The more I listened, the more I recognized myself in it. Rowan, if that was still her, appeared less often now. When she did, her voice vibrated at multiple tones simultaneously. Like several versions of her were trying to speak from within one form. She smiled often, like she was on the edge of some vast joy I couldn't comprehend. The transformation is not linear, she said once. It's recursive. Layered. Like peeling back skin only to find more skin. Until you realize skin was never the point. I stopped eating. Stopped needing to. Instead, I consumed patterns. Lights. Sounds. Meaning. I began drawing the glyphs from my dreams on the walls. I didn't know what they meant, but they meant me. And then the threshold opened. Not beneath the ice. Not inside the earth. But within the facility itself. In the old communications chamber, where the echo first spoke to us, the geometry fractured. Not broken. Shifted. Like a room unfolding in impossible ways. I stepped inside. And it was like falling into my own reflection. But there was no mirror. No surface. Only infinite iterations of myself, past, present, possible, bleeding into one another. I stood in a field of silence that screamed. Light danced in logical impossibilities. Gravity flickered. I felt my body shatter into particles, and then reorganize, not as flesh, but as an equation. One solved by contact. One sustained by recognition. I saw what Rowan had become. She was no longer in a single place. She was a bridge, suspended across planes like a spiderweb of consciousness. "You're almost ready," she said, her voice not from her mouth, but from the space between events. "What is it?" I asked. "What's the echo?" Her answer was simple. "It's how the architects knock. And it's our turn to answer." The chamber was no longer a room. It was a lens, focused inward. Through it, I saw them. Not as forms. Not as gods. But as truths. Mathematical constants given intention. They weren't watching from afar. They were inside us, waiting to be understood. They called themselves the architects. Not in language, but in pattern. In spirals that folded thought into shape. Each of them moved like algorithms with shape and soul, wearing physics like a garment. I saw the one that had spoken to Rowan. It moved like a Mobius strip made of shadow and memory. Another radiated the sound of birth and collapse at once. And they knew me. Not as Elias Grant. But as a sequence, a bridge, encoded by contact. "Your world has always been layered," they said. "Your perception is the cage." I couldn't speak, but they didn't need words. They showed me history. Not ours. Theirs. Worlds like ours. Civilizations that heard the echo and answered. Some collapsed. Others ascended. A few became hosts. Gateways between dimensions. Fixed points in the bleeding multiverse. That's what Earth was becoming. That's what Project Echo had triggered. The pulse wasn't a message. It was a ping, a signal of readiness. And now the reply had been sent. I saw the convergence begin. Reality rippled across the Arctic sky. Stars blinked in patterns. The ice cracked without sound. The station twisted in space but didn't collapse. It restructured, like an organism adjusting its spine. Back in my body, if that word still applied, I stood at the center of it all. The shard of black glass in my hand ignited, glowing with inner equations. My veins lit up. I felt myself unfold across every version of me I'd ever been. And in that moment, I understood. The architects weren't invading. They were inviting. But only those who had heard the echo and survived it could cross the threshold and become the bridge. I was ready. The architects stood motionless, and yet I felt them reaching. Not physically. Not even spiritually. But through recognition. Through alignment. I was the last component of the equation. The station, if it could still be called that, had become a geometric womb, pulsating with dimensional energy. The walls no longer held metal. They shimmered with latticework that resembled thought given shape. And at the center of it all was the core transmitter. No longer a machine, but a gate. Through it, I could see other realities bleeding into ours. A world of inverted oceans. A place of infinite staircases spiraling into auroras. A starless void humming with logic and memory. And from each of them, they were watching. Not the architects. Others. Observers. Witnesses. Students. I looked down at my hand. The shard was gone. Its symbols were now within me, etched into my flesh, pulsing beneath my skin like a second circulatory system of meaning. Rowan appeared, or what she had become. "I can't follow you from here," she said. "You're going somewhere even I can't see." "I don't know if I want this," I whispered. And it was true. But choice had become a formality. The moment I heard the echo, I had started walking this path. Everything else had been ritual. The architects unfolded around me. They spoke not in words, but acceptance. And then, everything split. Time folded. I saw every moment I'd ever lived as pages in a book burning from both ends. I was the first signal. I was the final response. And then, with no sound, with no movement, I stepped into the gate. I became frequency. Translation. Threshold. The Arctic cracked open above. A ring of crystal light emerged from the ice, visible for miles. They'll call it a phenomenon. A mystery. A cover-up. But one day, someone else will hear the echo. And they'll remember my name. Or the idea that I was. And they'll know. The architects never left. They were waiting. And now, the door is open. You've heard the echo. You've seen what lies beyond the ice. Now ask yourself. What if the next voice calling from the void is yours? We are not alone. We were never meant to be. But some doors were never supposed to open. And yet, we did. If this story gripped your soul, subscribe now to enter the unknown with us. Hit the like. Leave your thoughts below. And share this with someone who still thinks reality is safe. This is Dark Waves Universe. The final frontier isn't space, is the truth.